Today I just wanted to take up a little bit of your time to talk about a project called Streamline and Strengthen, which is a national project which has been kicked off by members of the National Farmers Federation, and it is a little bit back to the future, hence why we've got the famous car from the movie Back to the Future. In 1979 the NFF was born, and it was all about trying to have a single united voice for agriculture. We're now in the year 2015, so when you look at, I guess if you look at cars that were built in 1979, I'm not sure you'd probably want to be driving one in 2015. And I think for us with agricultural advocacy, we certainly need to look at an improvement on the great legacies and work that's been done in the past. So I guess one of the things that, if you look at agriculture, one of the great opportunities for agriculture is the fact that from an economy point of view, it's really a key driver for the economy. It's really the only lever, I guess, the government's got in terms of, if it gets its policies right, there's an opportunity to double our production and our agricultural output. So New Zealand have set themselves a target, and again, there's no shame in copying if people do things well. New Zealand are quite good at things like rugby, and we try and copy them there. But if you look at them in their exporting, they are world class. They've got world class businesses like Fonterra. There's no reason why we shouldn't have 4 or 5 Fonterras across different sectors: dairy, grains, beef, poultry, etc. So there's actually, I guess, a North Star, which is about doubling our agricultural production. But if we're going to do that, there's a number of things that we need to put in place. And one of those is ensuring that we have a strong, united voice representing our sector. So if you look at this chart, it shows the opportunities. If we were to double our agricultural output, one of the key winners will be horticulture. We are one of the only markets in the world where you can actually have something growing in a field, you can process it and have it shipped into a market the next day, pretty much the same day in some parts of Asia. So there's a real opportunity for us across all our commodities to really drive agricultural output. But what we're really going to need to do is also not just commodities, but importantly create brands. Brands is where you have value. I was lucky enough to work in the spirits industry and the beer industry, where you have very, very good margins. And you build brands and then you reinvest. And you not only reinvest in the brands, but invest in the people. And that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, as is the NFF, around ensuring that we attract and retain talent to our sector. How many times do we hear people talking down our industry, and often it's our own people. We also are in danger of times of talking to ourselves. We do that quite well. We need to broaden the reach and be very careful in the tone that we use when we talk to the consumer. At the end of the day, the consumer is always right. So if we were to go for a $100 billion industry, there's a number of things we need to get right. Human talent is very important. Our leading companies around the world, human talent, they look after and retain their talent and nurture the talent. They're also investing. They're investing all the time in brands and structures around their businesses. They're looking for capital all the time. So I guess this chart is really just showing there's some really important drivers. Accelerating productivity is another one. And premium branding, as I said before, is a very important piece. And then market access, which we're starting to get, I guess, with our free trade agreements. So that's all very nice. We've got that on the horizon. But in terms of how we're going to achieve it, well, I was at the Future Farmers Conference yesterday, and the young farmers, before Simon Talbot and I got up to talk about Streamline and Strengthen, the young farmers themselves talked about the importance of having a scalable single voice. So it's a very important component for us to reach that North Star, is having a unified voice. The first thing we're going to talk about is the physical unification. So the NFF have been working with a number of members and looking at, I guess, a number of different options. And this is the one that we've landed on, and this is the one that we're going to put a lot more rigour around and work out the cost benefit of it, and obviously then get it out to the organisations that represent farmers across Australia, of which there are 80 organisations currently in Australia. When Simon Talbot and I presented this to both sides of the federal parliament, they all said, just get on with it. You need to do it. Although they said, if you do get a strong united voice, it's going to make us more accountable, but they're doing the right thing, that shouldn't matter. So the reality is, what we're looking at here is there will be Farmers Australia. Let's call it Farmers Australia is the name of the organisation. You'll have affiliate members, so it's important that we attract the supply chain to the sector as well. You'll have state farm divisions, so Farmers New South Wales Farmers Association would become Farmers Australia New South Wales. And then you'd also have either integrated commodity councils or independent commodity councils. An example of an independent commodity council would be Cotton Australia. Probably our shining star in agriculture. Not probably, definitely our shining star in agriculture. Independently funded, very rigorous business, well run, and they do a very good job of promoting their industry. So they would sit as a member of Farmers Australia, and they put people on different working groups when we've got issues around water, for example. And then with the integrated, that may be groups that potentially don't have the funding sources in the future to exist on their own. And just as an example could be the grains industry, could be an integrated commodity group within Farmers Australia. You would then have that membership, but importantly from a policy point of view, you would have a farmer in a local area. They would belong to a region or a zone, because let's remember that over 80% of the issues impacting a farmer in, say, New South Wales are local and state government issues. So then they belong either through a state policy council or a commodity council, part of Farmers Australia. So what it means is at a local level, we still want to drive that localism and that importance of dealing with local issues. So I guess the benefit that we see in New South Wales from a New South Wales farmers' perspective is, if we just looked at the state farming bodies, the amount of duplication with boards, CEOs, HR, payroll, finance, there's no reason why we couldn't have a finance team based in Melbourne doing all the accounting for all of the advocacy sector. How good would it be if we had an HR person that had the helicopter view of Australia? So when there was someone working in Queensland that wanted some different challenges, you could pick them up and put them in Tasmania. Or maybe that's not fair, put them in Victoria. So it's a real opportunity to move talent around, which I think is important. Another way of showing it, I guess with a bit of colour, is again, one of the opportunities is with offices. There could be an opportunity for us to have regional offices across Australia where we share resources, and it becomes the spiritual home for local farmers in local areas, a one-stop shop where they can go in and deal with an IR issue, for example, or deal with a policy issue. I'll come back to the timeline around the physical. The other piece around the unification, so streamline and strengthen, is a virtual unification. So it's very important that we get the structure right and the physical unification, the bricks and mortar. But we also need to acknowledge that we're in the digital age. So my point before about the car analogy, we need to make sure that we're also creating a virtual online platform that will, I guess, modernise our processes around advocacy, lobbying, but also precision agriculture. Interestingly, we've been doing a study since January called Listen to the Land through Google Analytics, and we've been listening in on conversations. We've also been able to pinpoint key influences in the World Wide Web. Some of them I feel like sending a few people around there to sort them out, but we can't do that. But the reality is these people are very influential, particularly in the animal welfare space, the animal activists. But what we're seeing is that only 15% of people that are talking online are actually farmers when they're talking about farming issues. So when you look over here, the top 5 negative issues being talked about online: farmers, drought, GM, water, mining, and mental health. And mental health is quite a surprising one, because mental health is all about the sense of loss with regional services communities in decline, which creates a lot of anguish for farmers, particularly when They want to try and attract the next generation home.